रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितं च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। Okay, so welcome to the Bhagavad Gita discussion. Today we will be discussing from Bhagavad Gita chapter 1 verse number 46. I'll start with the verse and you all can follow along. Sanjaya Uvacha
Sanjaya Uvacha
Evam Uktva Arjuna Sankhye
Evam Uktva Arjuna Sankhe
Rathopastha Upavishat
Ratopastha Upavishat
Visjasa Sharam Chapam
Visrajya Sasharam Chapam
Shoka Samvigna Manasaha
Shoka Samvigna Manasaha.
Sanjaya Uvacha
Sanjaya Uvacha
Evam Uktva Arjuna Sankhye
Evam Uktva Arjuna Sankhe
Rathopastha Upavisat
Ratopastha Upavishat
Visrijya Sharam Chapam
Visrajya Sasharam Chapam
Shoka Samvigna Manasaha
Shoka Samvigna Manasaha.
Sanjaya Uvacha
Sanjaya Uvacha
Evam Uktva Arjuna Sankhye
Evam Uktva Arjuna Sankhe
Rathopastha Upavishat
Ratopastha Upavishat
Visrijya Sharam Chapam
Visrajya Sasharam Chapam
Shoka Samvigna Manasaha
Shoka Samvigna Manasaha.
संजय उवाच
Sanjaya Uvacha
एवम् उक्त्वा अर्जुनः सांख्ये
Evam Uktva Arjuna Sankhe
रतोपस्थ उपाविशत्
Ratopastha Upavishat
विसृज्य सशरं चापम्
Visrajya Sasharam Chapam
शोकसंविघ्नमानसः
Shoka Samvigna Manasaha. Sanjaya Uvacha
Sanjaya Uvacha
Evam Uktva Arjuna Sankhe
Evam Uktva Arjuna Sankhye
Ratopastha Upavishat
Rathopastha Upavishat
Visrajya Sasharam Chapam
Visrijya Sasharam Chapam
Shoka Samvigna Manasaha.
Shoka Samvigna Manasaha.
Sanjay Uvacha
Sanjaya
Uvacha
Evamuktva Arjuna Sankhe
Evam Uktva Arjuna Sankhe
Ratopastha Upavishat
Rathopastha Upavishat
Visrajya Sasharam Chapam
Visrijya Sasharam Chapam
Shoka Samvigna Manasaha.
Shoka Samvigna Manasaha. Synonyms. Sanjaya Uvacha. Sanjaya said.
Sanjaya said
Evam. Thus. Uktva. Saying. Arjuna. Arjun. Sankhye. In the battlefield. Ratha. Of the chariot. Upasthe. On the seat.
on the seat,
Upavishat,
Upavishat,
sat down again.
sat down again,
Visrijya,
Visrajya,
putting aside.
putting aside,
Sasharam,
Sasharam,
along with arrows.
along with arrows,
Chapam,
Chapam,
the bow.
the bow,
Shok,
Shoka,
by lamentation.
by lamentation,
Samvigna,
Samvigna,
distressed.
distressed,
Manasa,
Manasa,
within the mind.
within the mind.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Sanjaya said, Arjun, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. Purport. While observing the situation of his enemy, Arjun stood up on the chariot, but he was so afflicted with lamentation that he sat down again, setting aside his bow and arrows. Such a kind and soft-hearted person in the devotional service of the Lord is fit to receive self-knowledge. Translation once again. He said, Arjun, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namine Namaste Saraswati Deva Gaurani Charini Nirvisheshwani Paschadeshtarani. Okay, so here in this chapter, we see how the battle is starting. It's basically setting the scene, right? And Arjuna asks Krishna, who's Sarathi, who's basically driving the chariot of Arjun, and Arjun requests Krishna to take the chariot in the middle of the battleground so that he can observe, who all are there in the opposite, on the opposite side, who are fighting, ready to fight that war with him. And when he does that, and he observes that almost everyone who is on the other side includes people who he is very much attached to, right? His near and dear ones. And then he basically gets overwhelmed with emotions at that point. And of course, as Srila Prabhupada is pointing, because Arjun is a devotee, right? So he's very kind-hearted. That is one of the qualities of devotees, that by very nature, they are very kind and soft-hearted people. Right? So, and Krishna, he's also very kind, right? So similarly, devotees, they are also very, very merciful, but they are even more merciful than Krishna, as we see here, right? So Arjun seems to be overwhelmed with kindness here. It's actually a mix, right? It's kindness, but as we see in the purports as Prabhupada has given in this chapter, he's seeing everything from a bodily perception, right? From the bodily platform, right? And because of that, he looks at everyone else as his relatives, his society, right? He gives a very good argument, that would actually make a lot of sense, and it does make a lot of sense to general masses, to people who do not really understand the spiritual, the soul, the spirit, who are based on the material platform. But, they are more inclined towards the welfare of the country, the society. They are all good people, but they do not understand the spiritual aspect of life, or that they are not this body, but they are souls, right? So Arjuna was similarly basing his argument on that platform, and on account of that, many people find his argument to be convincing. I mean, people in general who are materialistic and do not understand the spirit soul. But as we see in the next chapter, Krishna actually breaks his argument point by point. And in fact, he says that although you may be talking like a very learned person, but what you are saying is actually very, very foolish. It does not make sense. And that is not the right thought. I mean, just imagine if, a soldier is participating in a war, right? And he looks at his enemies and suddenly he becomes very kind and he does not want to fight, right? That would be understood as if he's a coward, right? It won't be construed his kindness. And that's one of the arguments, that one of the logics that Krishna gives him, that if you do not fight the war and run away from the war, people will tag you as a coward, right? Today you are known as a very brave person, but it won't bring you any benefit and it does not make any sense, right? So we see here, and this is something that happens to almost all of us, right? We face a situation in the material world when we are living our lives, and sometimes it so happens that we have to perform a certain job, a certain duty, right? But then we could get overwhelmed from time to time from what we have to do, right? We can get overwhelmed by some feelings, right? And we see Arjun being in a similar situation, right? And then we see how, because Arjun is a devotee, right? And he's in his heart, he's surrendered unto Krishna, right? So he seeks his guidance, and Krishna very nicely kind of deals with him, and he instructs him this divine philosophy, the divine science of Bhagavad Gita. And it is actually meant for all of us. Although Arjun, he, as we understand, is a Nitya Parshad of Lord Krishna. So he is basically just playing a role in this Leela, in this pastime of Krishna, and he's helping Krishna so that all of us can benefit from this knowledge and this science of Bhagavad Gita, right? So although in this here, we see Arjun, after giving all of the arguments, right, Arjun stood up on the chariot, but he was so affected with lamentation that he sat down again, right? So it seems like he's trying, right? He tries to find a way out of it. He tries to give Krishna all kind of arguments, right? He somehow or the other, his only wish is if there could be a way out of this war, although he knows within his heart that Krishna has already decided that the war will happen. So there is no way out, actually, right? If Krishna has decided something, that is what will happen. And being a devotee, he also understands that. But still, just like it happens with us many a times, right? We understand that this is what is going to happen and probably is the right thing to happen. And this is what Krishna's plan is, right? But even then, we somehow try to come up with some arguments so that we find a way out of it if it is not very palatable to us, right? So basically, this is what is happening here, right? And that's why Bhagavad Gita is also very, very practical. And then we see how Krishna, being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, dispels all of his myths, and all of his arguments are thwarted, and eventually he surrenders unto Krishna, and he basically fights with full vigor, with his full potency and his full energy. He dedicates himself to the instructions of Krishna, and then he fights the war, right? So this also is a good example of how to deal with those situations when they come to us in our lives, right? What is the best way, right? So of course, we do not have the facility or this ability at this point based on our current state, so that we can have directly, so that we can have Krishna guiding us directly, right? We haven't really attained that level yet. But Krishna, by his infinite mercy, has gifted us with our spiritual master, right? The spiritual teacher, including the Shastras, right? Shiksha Guru, Diksha Guru, and Shastras. Basically, primarily these three, right? The devotee association, devotees, scriptures, and the spiritual master. So they are our guides, basically. And just like Arjuna is kind of seeking the help of Krishna, we also should, in these situations, instead of getting overwhelmed, right, we should try and seek the help of the devotees, the scriptures, and particularly the spiritual master, because we are not so advanced that we could understand what Krishna really desires in a certain situation, right? But if we seek help and guidance from spiritual master can guide us in the right direction, right? And by by seeking his advice, we can primarily basically that will help us to take the right decision whenever we get stuck, and we get stuck in any such situation where we see Arjun currently being stuck, right? So although he fully understands that Krishna's plan is to have the war, but still he's kind of giving the opposite argument that, oh, I will not fight, right? So this is what is basically troublesome, right? Because the ideal situation is, whatever Krishna decides, whatever is Krishna's plan, our role as his part and parcel is to surrender unto him, right? We are his eternal servants, and being his eternal servants, it is our it is basically our religion, right? That is what our original constitutional position is, that we serve Krishna by surrendering unto him, right? And when we do not do that, that becomes a cause of misery, right? We see at other times also in Mahabharata, for example, Yudhishthir, there is a pastime when they had to kill Dronacharya, right? And Krishna being Krishna, he instructs Yudhishthir to go and tell Dronacharya that his son is dead, although he was alive. And Yudhishthir being the Dharmaraj, he always spoke the truth. So he was hesitant to do it, right? And because of that, although Krishna was saying that you go and tell him that your son is dead, although it was false, but Yudhishthir was hesitant to do it, and that's why he had to see hell, right? So whatever Krishna decides is basically the right thing to do. We should have that firm conviction as devotees. We should completely understand that Krishna is the one who sets the rules, right? Because he is the ultimate proprietor of everything, right? Sarvasya chaham hridi sannavishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedescha sarver aham eva vedyo vedanta vid vedakrit eva chaham, right? So he's saying vedakrit eva chaham, I am the one who has created the Vedas, right? So, and this understanding of what should be done and what should not be done is coming from the Vedas. So Krishna, because he is the creator of the Vedas, he is the one who lays down, what is right, what is wrong, what should be done, what should not be done, right? So there cannot be anyone but Krishna who can really understand the intricacies of action, right? What should be done, what should not be done, what is appropriate and what is inappropriate. There is no question for us to argue or to give a logic that goes against what Krishna desires. So that does not make any sense, right? So we as devotees should have firm conviction that the right thing to do is what Krishna is desiring, right? Or the message that we are receiving on behalf of Krishna from our spiritual master. We should have that firm conviction and surrender unto the lotus feet of the spiritual master and Krishna, that without hesitation, we should be ready to just go ahead. Of course, there could be doubts. It does not mean that you do not ask questions. Just like here we see, Arjuna is asking all kind of questions with Krishna. So, but not in the spirit to defy the instruction that is given to us, not by that spirit. We can ask questions just to get a better understanding, because of course our brains are not that very much capable, right? So sometimes it could take time, and Krishna, just like here, Arjun took his time to understand, but Krishna kept on going till he was 100% convinced. Similarly, our spiritual master, he also from time to time, would repeat that same thing again and again, because spiritual master understands fully well that, we do not really have a very sharp brain that can understand some of the instructions that are given, right? So out of their infinite mercy, both Krishna and the spiritual master, because they're very kind and they understand us, right? They would go out of their way to make sure that we understand, right? But we also on our part should try our best and should understand that the instruction coming from them is actually perfect. And if it does not make sense to us, there has to be something lacking in our understanding, right? And over a period of time, it will be revealed to us, right? Just like, when we were students and when we used to study and something did not make sense, teacher was saying something, the textbook was saying something, but just did not click, did not make sense. Then the way is to practice, right? Once we hear the same instruction again and again over a period of time. And that's what happened here as well, right? So Krishna tried to explain the same point to Arjun through different ways, and eventually Arjun was able to understand that. And we see that in the material sphere as well, when the teacher is providing an instruction to the student. Sometimes some things may not be understood at the very beginning, and it might take some time. But if the student is diligent, by having complete faith on the instruction of the teacher, right? If he has complete faith that the teacher is telling the truth, what is the three laws of motion that are written in the book are actually accurate. If they are not making sense, probably I need to practice a little more, understand it a little more, make some more effort to understand what they really mean, right? Perform some experiments, for example, and eventually I will understand, right? So we should proceed with that understanding. Instead of rejecting, we should accept. And once we accept and we start to behave in a certain way, by accepting that instruction, gradually the potency of that instruction is revealed to us through practice. So it is very, very important for us to kind of have that complete surrender and faith unto the lotus feet of the spiritual master and the scriptures. And of course, as I said, not blindly, because if we are blind, basically blind means if you just listen to it, right? It should not be that. We should make an effort to make sure that it makes sense. But at that point, if it does not make sense, even after trying very hard, if it does not make sense, even then we should accept it instead of rejecting it, and have the complete faith that over a period of time, it would be understood. So with that spirit, we should proceed. Okay, so we will move on to the next verse. Any questions thus far from the previous verse? Or any comments? Okay. So this is the first verse of the second chapter. I'll quickly read the verse and then we'll straight away move to translation and purport. Sanjay Uvacha
Sanjay Vacha.
Tam tatha kripayavishtam
Tam tatha kripayavishtam.
Ashrupurna Kule Krishna Ashrupurna Kule
Ashrapurna
Kulekshanam
Kulekshanam.
Vishidantam idam vakyam
Vishidantam idam vakyam.
Uvacha Madhusudanaha.
Uvacha Madhusudanaha.
Synonyms: Sanjay Uvacha.
Sanjay Vacha.
Sanjay said,
Sanjay said,
Tam
Tam
unto Arjun,
unto Arjun,
Tatha
Tatha
thus,
Das
Kripaya
Kripaya
by compassion,
by compassion,
Avishtam
Avishtam
overwhelmed,
overwhelmed,
Ashrupurna Akul
Ashrupurna Akul
full of tears,
full of tears,
Ikshanam
Ikshanam
eyes,
eyes,
Vishidantam
Vishidantam
lamenting,
lamenting,
Idam
Idam
these,
these,
Vakyam
Vakyam
words,
words,
Uvach
Uvacha
said,
said,
Madhusudana
Madhusudana
the killer of Madhu.
the killer of Madhu.
Translation: Sanjaya said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudan, Krishna, spoke the following words. Purport: material compassion, lamentation, and tears are all signs of ignorance of the real self. Compassion for the eternal soul is self-realization. The word Madhusudan is significant in this verse. Lord Krishna killed the demon Madhu, and now Arjun wanted Krishna to kill the demon of misunderstanding that had overtaken him in the discharge of his duty. No one knows where compassion should be applied. Compassion for the dress of a drowning man is senseless. A man fallen in the ocean of nations cannot be saved simply by rescuing his outward dress, the gross material body. One who does not know this and laments for the outward dress is called Shudra, or one who laments unnecessarily. Arjun was a Kshatriya, and this conduct was not expected from him. Lord Krishna, however, can dissipate the lamentation of the ignorant man, and for this purpose, the Bhagavad Gita was sung by him. This chapter instructs us in self-realization by an analytical study of the material body and the spirit soul, as explained by the Supreme Authority, Lord Shri Krishna. This realization is possible when one works without attachment to fruitive results and is situated in the fixed conception of the real self. I'll read translation once again. Sanjay said, seeing Arjun full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudan Krishna spoke the following words. Right. So as Prabhupada, in the previous verse, he was indicating that, being a devotee, Arjun is very kind. But here, Prabhupada is indicating very clearly, right? Material compassion, lamentation, and tears are all signs of ignorance of the real self, right? So clear, Prabhupada is making it very clear that all of these things, of course, he is very kind because he's a devotee, but because also he's enacting as if he is ignorant of the real self. He is thinking from a material bodily perspective, right? And therefore, these are all of the symptoms of a person who is self-ignorant, right? Or who is ignorant of the real self, that is the spirit soul. And, he only understands that I am this body, right? So compassion for the eternal soul is self-realization. That is the real compassion. We have to understand that who we really are. And then Prabhupada is indicating to the word Madhusudan here, because Krishna is the killer of the demon Madhu, right? And therefore Arjun is kind of seeking his help, Krishna's help, to kill the demon of misunderstanding that has overtaken him in the discharge of his duties. And then Prabhupada is indicating that how compassion for the dress of a drowning man is senseless, right? So if a person is drowning, right, and if a person is drowning and instead of being sad about the person, you become sad about his beautiful dress, right? That would be the most foolish thing to do. Dress does not really have any value when you compare it to the real person, right? So that basically this is Prabhupada is indicating this, that is what is happening here, that Arjuna is lamenting for everyone from a material standpoint. And as Krishna will indicate in this chapter, that all of these entities, it was not that they just came today, they have always been there, right? He says that, all of them, they were always here, they will always be there. And similarly, I have always been there, right? So we are all eternal part and parcels of Krishna. We are all eternal souls who have been in existence since eternity. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin, nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuya, ajo nityo shashvato yam purano, na hanyate hanyamane sharire, right? So there is no birth, na jayate mriyate va kadachin, nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuya. It's not like we came into existence at some point, right? We have always existed and we will always exist. Ajo nityo shashvato yam purano, na hanyate hanyamane sharire. So although the weapon can cut the body, but it can do nothing to the soul itself. And that is what our real identity is, right? And a person who laments for the outward dress is termed as Shudra. It is not at all befitting to Kshatriya, as Prabhupada is indicating in the purport, right? So that is totally foolish for a person, who is lamenting for the dress and not for the person itself, right? So this body is compared to a dress, right? And the universal truth is that a person has to leave this body behind once it becomes too weak, right? And it's not serving any purpose. And then he has to move on, right? And all of that is very nicely arranged by Krishna, right? Through his material energy. Through his material energy, Krishna is very nicely arranged all of these things, right? As he says, Maya Dakshena Prakriti Suyate Sa Characharam Hetu Nanena Kaunteya Jagat Viparivartate. Under my leadership, under my overall leadership, my material energy, Maya Shakti, right? Maya Dakshena Prakriti Suyate Sa Characharam. So all the living and non-living entities that we see here, everything that we can see here, they are very nicely, they are coming into existence and getting annihilated, right? And all of that is being carried out by Maya Shakti, by my material energy, through my orders, right? Hetu nanena kaunteya jagat viparivartate. So that is the ultimate reality that Krishna has arranged for this material world, right? And through his material energy, he takes care of, he does not directly take care of it, right? As he's indicating in this verse. And that is something also very important for us to understand, that Krishna, what he really does is he simply enjoys doing pastimes with his devotees, right? Leelas. That's his real kind of a duty. So that reminds me, once, I was in my office and I had this calendar of Krishna in my office. So there in that calendar, Arjun is very nicely holding his flute, and with one hand on the cow, and with one hand he's holding a flute, and he's looking towards infinity, of course, with a peacock feather on his head and all that, in Vrindavan, right? So that was the picture on the calendar. And one of my colleagues, actually, he's Christian American, so he came and he was in my office and looking around, and suddenly he looked at it and he asked me, who is he? I told him he's God. Okay, oh yes, I can totally believe he's God. I mean, he's so chilled out, he has nothing to do, so I can totally believe you when you say that he's God, right? So that is actually
I have to say something also, Prabhu.
yes, yes,
I
Mataji.
had a similar experience. One of my co-workers also, apparently she got a calendar also, but
Uh-huh.
it had pictures of paradise in different religions. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Yes,
So,
yes.
and one of them was Vrindavan, with Krishna and his flute.
Yeah.
And she asked me the same question. She said, "Who is this?" She asked me, and I also said, "It's Krishna. It's our, our Lord." And then
Yes.
she said, then the next question she asked me was, "Why is he blue?"
Uh-huh. Okay.
So I said, well, actually it's the color of love, like
Yeah.
prema, So I said it's the color of love, love. And then she said, looks at me and she said, like, yeah, if God wants to be blue, he can be blue. Why not? Because, she actually agreed with me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So this person who I'm talking about, actually, he goes to the church. It was long time ago, about 6, 7, in my previous office. And
yeah, this was also a long time ago, and she was an older Catholic lady.
Yeah. So this is also, this guy must be in his 50s, and he was telling me once, I used to go to the church. Nowadays I don't go that much, but I really want to go, right? So he's kind of a pious kind of a person, and he immediately understood. And like, yeah, I can totally believe, this is God, because he's so chilled out, he has nothing to do, and that's how God should be. He doesn't have to make any extra efforts to create all of these universes and manage these universes. He's not like us. It's all, it's all delegated out for him. He doesn't really, just through his thought, he can take care of all of that, right? He doesn't really have to make that extra effort, and that's what differentiates us from Krishna. This controlling the material world, as we are all trying to do, is not really meant for us. This is something that comes naturally to Krishna, and that too, just by thinking, he does that. It's very natural. The entire objective of the control is simply to facilitate the real purpose, right? And the real purpose is the loving exchange between the Lord and the devotees, right? Because we are all Krishna's eternal part and parcels, right? We are all, and our constitutional position is to serve Krishna, right? We eternally are engaged in the service of Krishna, and that is what gives us bliss or happiness, right? And Krishna is self-sufficient. So sometimes, people misconstrue this idea of devotional service, but it is very important for us to understand, right? So one example is, and I experience this every time because I have a 3-year-old now. I mean, when I think about my son, he's just 3. And if you think about it, what can he really do to serve me? I mean, the best service that he can really do is if he just sits nicely and plays with his toys without bothering me and my wife. Right? That's the best service that that he could do, because for everything else we will have to do something for him, right? So our situation is exactly like that. We hardly have anything practical that we could serve Krishna in a practical way, serve him in a way that he is lacking. There is nothing that we can provide him in which he is lacking. So when we say serve Krishna, it does not really mean that we have to make an extra effort to please him in this way or that way. No, simple meaning of being a servant of Krishna is just to surrender into him, right? And surrendering to Krishna simply means to accept his services, really. That's what the true meaning of it is. Because if we look at our lives, we are simply, everything that we do has been provided to us by Krishna, right? Anything that we can think of, whether it is food, sunlight, water, oxygen, you just name it, whatever minerals that we have. And the other words that I said, sarvasya chaham hridi sanna vishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. Even remembrance and forgetfulness, we are not capable enough to do it on our own, right? All of that is coming from Krishna. So he's complete in itself, and he's providing everything to us. He's facilitating this experience that we are currently having. There is no way that we can provide Krishna anything. But when we accept Krishna and we surrender unto him, that gives a lot of joy and a lot of pleasure to Krishna and to us, right? To both of us. The example that I was giving of my son, even though he may not provide me anything material or, of any practical utility, but just his mood to engage with me, right? That itself is the source of pleasure for a parent, right? When the kids, they engage with them in a loving way, when I give something to him and he accepts very nicely, and then whatever I have provided him, when he gives it back to me, although, because I of course provided him, I could have bought it myself for myself, right? So he's not creating any positive effect materially, but that mood to give it back to me itself is a source of joy, right? So we have to understand this idea of devotional service is very, very important, right? So to serve Krishna simply means to surrender unto him. By surrendering him, right, by dovetailing ourselves to Krishna and engaging with him, right? And the best way to understand devotional service and what does it really mean to serve Krishna comes from, the scriptures, whether it's Chaitanya Charitamrit, Chaitanya. I'm actually, these days I'm listening to Chaitanya Mangal, and there is a very wonderful pastime, which actually made me realize that what is this entire business of serving Krishna. And I'll share that with you. So once what happens, and actually this same pastime also is in Srimad Bhagavatam, because you would find many things that are kind of common between the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Krishna, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. So this one pastime I really liked. So what happens is when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is really young, he's a little kid, Nimai, right? And of course, Shachi Mata and Jagannath Mishra, his parents, they are raising him very nicely. So once upon a time, what happened was, there is this Brahmin, a Vipra, basically a sannyasi, right? He goes from one place to the other, just like the sannyasis do, and, not for themselves, but they are benefiting the entire society, right? So once this Brahmin, a sannyasi, came to their home, and just like the Vedic culture, right, to accept a guest, and particularly a sannyasi, he's very highly respected, right? So there is a proper etiquette to attend to him. So in a similar fashion, Jagannath Mishra, Nimai's father, he accepted, he welcomed that Brahmin very nicely to the home. He washed his feet, he served him really nicely, and he asked him, where do you live, Maharaj, where is your house? And he told him, I'm a sannyasi, I do not really have a fixed residence, I just keep going from one place to the other. So there was this loving exchange that was going on. So Jagannath Mishra very nicely requested, it will be very wonderful if you give us the opportunity to serve you, right? We will provide you everything, and if we can have prasadam here today, it will be very nice. He requested, and that Brahmin, he accepted that service request. So Jagannath Mishra, of course, very nicely arranged everything. And this Brahmin had he used to serve Gopalji very nicely in Shaligram Shilas. He used to carry a Shaligram Shila around his neck, actually. And without feeding Krishna, he will never eat. And he used to cook for Krishna on his own. So Jagannath Mishra very nicely arranged all of the food material, everything that he needed to cook very nice prasadam. He very nicely arranged everything. And then this Brahmin very nicely cooked the food and everything, and prepared all the meal and everything. And then he went to offer it to Gopalji. And as he was doing that, suddenly Nimai comes, and whatever preparations he had made before he could actually offer, he picked it up, put it in his mouth, and he ran away, right? And as soon as it happened, this Brahmin, he got agitated. He was like, oh no, look what happened. This boy, I don't know from where he just came and took the prasadam and he ran away. And as soon as Jagannath Mishra, Nimai's father, as soon as he saw that, he was devastated. He was like, oh my goodness, what did this little boy do? I will now have to face the fury of this Brahmin. So he was very, very angry at Nimai. And of course, by that time, Nimai had already run away, and Jagannath Mishra is running after him and he's scolding him, and he's actually about to hit him when this Brahmin stops Jagannath Mishra, and he tells him that, there is no point of hitting us. He's just a kid. He does not have that level of understanding that, what he has done wrong. He's talking about Nimai, the Supreme Lord. But of course, at this point, he does not know that he's the Supreme Lord. He just thinks of him that he's a little boy. So, he's talking this way with Jagannath Mishra that you should not hit him. He's just a little kid. Probably, today Krishna does not want me to eat this nice prasadam. If you just have any fruits or vegetables, like these roots, turnip and all, carrots, I'll just somehow manage with that. You don't worry about it. And then Jagannath Mishra was feeling really, really bad. So he prayed to this Brahmin that, I'm very, very sorry. And I apologize that my son did this. I'm feeling so bad. And I request you to please cook the bhoga again. I will arrange everything again for you. But if you do not today accept prasadam, I will be very, very sad. So please accept it. He started requesting this Brahmin. So finally the Brahmin agreed, and, the entire, he started the entire process again. So Jagannath Mishra arranges everything. And, this time what they do is, because, Nimai, Mahaprabhu, of course, he did it once, he could do it again. So to avoid that, Shachi Mata, the mother, takes Nimai to another house, a neighbor's house, so that he does not disturb this time. So Brahman starts to cook the meal again. The same thing, very nicely, he cooks a meal. And as soon as he's about to offer, from somewhere, Nimai again comes. He again takes the meal, puts it into his mouth, and he runs away again. And everyone is devastated, like, oh my goodness, what is going on? Where did he suddenly come from? I thought he was in the neighbor's home. He's so naughty, and they are all totally devastated that I don't know what's going to happen this time. And this Brahmin is also upset. And then this time Vishwarup, the elder brother of Nimai, he actually comes. And this Brahmina had no mood to cook the meal again. And he was like, I'm pretty sure, I know this for a fact, that Krishna does not want me to have a nice prasadam today, these grains. So I'll just, these little fruits and vegetables will be sufficient for me today. Please do not be angry on the kid. He's just a kid. It's just that Krishna does not want me to have this food. And if Krishna does not want, it cannot happen. And then, Vishwarup, the elder brother of Nimai, who is an expansion of Lord Nityananda only. So he comes and he starts talking very sweetly to this Brahman, and this Brahman again, he gets melted basically by looking at Vishwarup and his charming words, basically, very charmingly, Vishwarup speaks with this Brahman, and he convinces him again to cook this entire meal a third time. And this time he promises, we'll make sure that Nimai does not come and disturbs you, and we'll make that arrangement. But our request is that you do it, please. So third time, the same process starts again. And this time everyone just surrounds Nimai completely. And, this Brahmin starts the preparation. And by the time he's doing it, Nimai just acts as if he's sleeping. He goes to bed. So everyone is kind of relieved that, oh, nice, now that he's sleeping, he will not be able to disturb. And the Brahmin is cooking the meal. And then by Yogamaya, what happens is everyone else sleeps. Everyone falls asleep. And this Brahmin, he's cooking the meal. And then Nimai comes to this Brahmin, and because everyone else is sleeping, he shows his form to this Brahmin, the four-handed form of Vishnu, Shankh, Chakra, Gada. But actually it was an 8-handed form, because this time he had 4 more hands. In 2 hands he's holding his flute, and in the other hands he's holding something else. I don't remember exactly what, but he showed his very nice Krishna form with Kaustubh Mani and everything to this Brahmin, and this Brahmin was so overwhelmed with bliss. His entire body was shivering with this extreme bliss when he saw that nice form of Nimai in the form of Krishna. And he became literally mad with bliss. He started putting all of that food that he had ignored previously. He started putting it all over this body. When Nimai revealed to him that, I am Krishna, and when you call my name so nicely, how could I not take your meal? And when I take your meal, you get upset with me. So it does not make sense. I'm coming here because you're inviting me so nicely. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reveals to him that we have met before. The previous time we met, I was here in Gokul as Krishna, and you came as a Brahmin, and I played with you in the similar fashion, just like I did just now. So when he hears that, he gets overwhelmed with bliss, and Nimai tells him that do not tell this to anyone, because this time I'm doing like a hidden pastime. It is not really in any Vedas or anywhere else. It's like my hidden form, because I've come here as a devotee of Krishna, of myself. So please do not reveal this to anyone. Just keep it to yourself. And then he goes back, and Yogamaya takes away the influence, and everyone else wakes up. And this Brahmin, he somehow tries to gather himself. And from that point on, of course, he was very, very pleased with everything that happened. And then from that, he did not tell it to anyone, because of course Mahaprabhu told him not to. But from then point on, he stayed nearby, and he was the one who knew that he's actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. And he used to visit him every day to take darshans of Nimai without telling anything to anyone. Right? So Krishna, in this way, he's playful. He can do whatever he wants. And his only purpose, his only objective, the only thing that Krishna does is to do these playful activities with the devotees. Right? So this Brahmin cooking, it's not really any effort for him. It's like the playfulness that he is having with the Lord, right? So that is the real deal. It's not that Krishna is hungry and he needs that food. It's not that. Krishna is self-sufficient. He does not need any food. But this pastime of the devotee out of his love, preparing that meal for Krishna, and then Krishna playing with him. So that's what the real deal is. So when we say serving Krishna, that is what it means. And Krishna also just this, he directly participates in these activities. And for everything else, wherever it comes of controlling the world, he has so many people who he has delegated it out to, simply by thinking he could do all of that, right? So that's not the real purpose. His only engagement is to enjoy with his, that's what is happening eternally. Krishna is simply enjoying with his devotees, and the devotees are enjoying with Krishna. So this loving pastime is going on, and that is the highest platform, right, which we should all aspire. So sorry, I took a little longer. It's 7:50. If anyone has any questions or comments.
Very nice pastime, Prabhu.
Thank you, Mataji. Yeah, Chaitanya Mangal is actually very, very beautiful. I'm listening to it these days, and I'm amazed to see how, some of the pastimes, they are so similar to Krishna's pastime in Vrindavan and Gokul. Some of the Mahaprabhu did. just so amazing. And that was just 500 years ago. Krishna came 5,000 years ago. So these are much more relatable actually.
Right, right. Yeah. Doesn't seem that long ago, right? When it's 500 years.
Yeah, I was thinking there was another pastime, not, yeah, basically before Mahaprabhu appeared, you know, we had Srivas Pandit, right? There were four brothers. So there is a very nice description of Navdeep that is provided in Chaitanya Mangal. And, you know, all
Mhm.
materially opulent and it has everything before the appearance of Mahaprabhu. But of course, we understand that at that time Mughals were ruling India, right?
Mhm.
So Srivas Pandit and these four brothers, there were very few actually who were dedicated in the devotional service of Krishna. You know, there were people who used to worship Durga and demigods, but not so many who were engaged in the devotional service of Krishna. So there is one story of Srivas Pandit and the four brothers when they used to do chanting, right? By hearing that chanting, the people in the village, they used to get very upset. They used to say that, you know, these guys, they will put us into trouble because there is a Muslim king. And once he finds out that this is what is going on here, you know, these guys will be punished, but we will also be punished along with them, right? So they used to hurl abuses at Srivas Pandit. So by listening to that, I was thinking, you know, we are much more fortunate. You know, we can chant however much we want on the streets, inside the house. There is no one to disturb us, right?
Right, right.
They'll try to make excuses. Here, you know, these guys, they are trying to do chanting even within the home, and the entire community is kind of up in arms with them. And they, in fact, wanted to drown their house in Ganges, in Ganga, because they were so scared of these Muslim rulers. So that was the situation at that time. So we are indeed very, very fortunate that this arrangement has been made for us. We are today, the situation of the world is at least, you know, the place where we are, whether it's India or in the US, or, you know, many places where Krishna consciousness movement is going on very nicely. At least there is no resistance. You know, if people may not be very welcoming, but they would allow us to do what we do. And here in the US, we see many people even appreciate, right? Sometimes if they get bothered by the noise and all, they would probably say once or twice, but that's pretty much it. No one is drowning us in Ganga.
Right, right. I mean, even when we are chanting in downtown Hartford,
Yeah.
no, people just don't, you know, they might ignore us, but they're not,
Right.
you know, hurling insults.
Think
at
of
us.
harming, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then Prabhupada has made such nice arrangements, right? It has become so convenient and easy for us to do and relish these pastimes and, you know, engage with devotees. So this is actually we are really blessed that very nice facility, and that made me think that, you know, we are not sure when this, if we miss this opportunity, the next time what kind of facility we will get, right? It cannot get better than what we currently have. So
right, you don't recognize the value, you know, of this human life.
Yeah. I mean, that just made me think that if that could happen to Srivas Pandit, he was such an exalted devotee, and people were hurling abuses at him because he was chanting Harinam. And, you know, Mahaprabhu was about to take birth, and that's about Navdeep. We are talking about Navdeep. It is one of the dhams. So we are indeed very fortunate that we are here. And
Yeah, and there's many pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Haridas Thakur, you know, all of these people around that time being persecuted by Muslims,
yes,
right?
yeah. We hear so many horror stories, you know, Mughals. They made it very, very difficult actually. They used to, particularly Aurangzeb, you know, he created so much destruction, destroyed so many of the temples, old temples at that time. And we see how some of our acharyas, you know, Goswamis, Filarup Goswami, Jiv Goswami, they handled everything so nicely, tactically. They had, you know, those relationships with the king of Jaipur, Rajasthan, where the Mughal influence was not so strong. And that's how the deities were moved from Vrindavan to Jaipur. Right? They struggled really hard, actually, including our Acharya Srila Prabhupada, they struggled really hard so that all of us, we can avail all of these facilities and make the best use of it, right? So just because of that, thinking that, everyone had to go through so much trouble, out of that, we should be respectful and make sure we put in our best effort to utilize the facility that has been provided to us.
Yeah, right now it's actually fertile ground, for preaching,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's currently very nice. Today in the inaugural address too, they have this service, right? The prayers, which is very nice. So Anuttama Prabhu was also one of the people who offered the prayers during the inauguration today from ISKCON.
Where, which?
Today, the Joe Biden, the new administration during the inauguration, yeah. So they called people from different
Faiths?
different faiths to offer prayers, and we also had a representative.
Oh, really? I
Yeah,
didn't know
from
that.
ISKCON. Yes.
Anuttama Das went?
Yes, he went.
And what did he do? What kind of prayer did he do?
He just offered the best wishes to the new administration, and that the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
It was very short, like 30 seconds, because there were so many. So
many,
that they
yes,
had
yes.
called. It was very short, but at least participation of ISKCON in the presidential inaugural.
It's a big deal, yeah, being such a small group, yeah.
So it is indeed a very fertile ground at this time, right, for ISKCON.
Mm-hmm.
The movement is growing in India and everywhere. Russia, I see China, pretty much everywhere in the world. So it is very, very nice facility at this point, right? So we have to try our best to make best use of it. Krishna has very kindly arranged all of this.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so it's 7:59. Anyone has any last questions or comments?
Quiz, where's Rasraj Prabhu's quiz? It's not there today?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, Prabhu.
Okay. I have received just 5 response till now. So I can wait for maybe 1 more minute, 1.5 minutes more.
Mhm.
All right. We can wait more 15 seconds. All right. Does anyone or is anyone answering? I see only 11. So if just anyone answering, just let me know. We can wait maybe 10 more seconds. Okay. So last 10 seconds. Okay. Here you go. I'm ending quiz here. It's a result. Okay, so the quick this all questions from the 2 verses which we discussed. The first is from the last verse. Who is fit for receive self knowledge? So the correct answer is the 4th one. That's what in the purport Prabhupada says, soft-hearted person in the devotional service of the Lord. And how many verses are there in first chapter? So we completed the first chapter. It's 46. Okay, I see lots of mixed answer. So what are the signs of ignorance of the real self, right? All applicable. So these signs we discussed in the 2.1, right? Metal, compassion, lamentation, tears in the eyes. The first 3 answer are correct. That's what mentioned in the purport. Okay, why did Arjuna refer Krishna as Madhusudana? Okay, so the correct answer is Arjuna wanted Krishna to kill the demon of misunderstanding in his mind. The third answer is correct, but I see 42% Krishna is the killer. Yeah, that's good. So what analogy did Prabhupada mention to explain about compassion? In the 2.1, he said that the dress of a drowning man, right? The second option is correct. Why Bhagavad Gita was spoken? So it is to dissipate lamentation of ignorant man. That's something. And the last verse, 7th is, which quote did Prabhuji there? That is the Sarvasya Chaham Hidi Sannivishto. He says that Vedeshcha Sarver Aham Eva Vedyo. So that is the purpose of Vedas, to understand Krishna, to know Krishna. 15.15 is correct. And last question, what is the purpose of life? Perform pure devotional service to Supreme Lord and go back to original. So that's all for today's. Thank you everyone for participating the quiz. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Devotees. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यः पतितानां
कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः।
अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद
श्री
की
वैष्णववृंद की जय।
लीला
शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। इस ग्रेस अभिराम प्रभु की जय।
प्रभुपाद की